Hello everyone, greetings. Today I'm going to teach you some fundamentals of Python programming. And really speaking, I know that some of these Python books or Python programs starts with some formal way um, of how to program in Python, right? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with something little advanced, and then as we build through a program, you will understand a lot of things on how you do things in Python. Okay. But what is expected uh, or requirement for this course is that you already should be familiar with some of the programming concepts, right? I'll try to go as slow as possible, but I'm assuming you already know to program in at least one programming language. Okay. So that's whom I'm um, teaching this course. Okay, so remember that. So to start with, what tool do we use to edit and kind of run our Python programs? I mean, there's a very easy tool called PyCharm, and there's a community edition of PyCharm which is really free. Right, I can show you where you can download that. You can search for PyCharm, and this is a IDE or integrated development environment, right? And so there's a professional one that you can download, but there is a community version of the same tool that you can download. Let me see. Well, I'll probably search for PyCharm Community Edition. Okay, so probably this one, right? And it's available for both Windows and Mac OS and Linux, so you can download it for any of those operating systems. Okay, so I'm just going to use the one which I already have uh, in my system. It's a Mac, and I I don't have any projects here. I wantonly removed all the projects so that I can, teach you with some of a clean project, right? So I create a new project, and at this point, I want to do something or teach you how to code some basic algorithms in Python. Okay, very basic algorithms. So I'm just going to call this project like basic. Okay, you can call whatever you want, doesn't matter. Just create a project. And this PyCharm IDE is really cool IDE, and it has these tips and stuff, but you can remove that. And under our basic project, I really want to teach you um, how to sort numbers. That's what I want to do. How do we sort? So let's say that you have 100 numbers. How do you sort it, right? How do you sort it when uh, they are in random order, right? So that's kind of what I want to teach you. And when we as we code that, I'm just going to give you all the different things that you can do in Python. Okay. So first thing first, I need to create my first Python program file, and I can do a new. I right click on the project and do a new, and I say Python file. Okay, and you got to give a name to it. I'm just going to give a name called sort example. Okay, right. Sort example. Okay, um, and okay, so that's my first program, right? And as part of my first program, I need to, so in order to sort a number or 100 numbers, I first need to generate 100 numbers, right? So that's kind of what we are going to do in this very first lesson. How do we generate 100 random numbers, right? And the first thing I want to tell you is that, like any other programming language and any other program, you usually have some standard libraries, right, which you can use. Like in C language, the very first program, you always include standard IO header file. Remember that? So like that, any programming language in Java, you have these import statements, right? So in Python, you can import libraries, and one of the libraries that we need to use is called as random. Okay, it's quite obvious, right? So how do I import or include libraries in my program? Very simple. You have a statement called import. Just say import random. Okay. Now, in this case, since it's a standard library, I just don't have to tell where it is located, things like that. It's part of Python, so it's just you say import random. Okay. Then the next step is okay. So I imported random. The very first thing that we always think about in any programming language is how do I output uh, some of my data, right? So the output statement in Python is as simple as that. It's print. Okay. It's a very sophisticated function, but I'll start with something print. Let me say hello. Okay. And in Python, that's it. You don't need to, I mean, other programming languages, you sometimes put a semicolon. In Python, you don't have to do that. And print is actually a function and it says hello, right? Let's start with that. Now, how do I run my program? You do have a menu which says run, and you can click on run, and it will tell. I mean, in C you have things like main programs. Here it's whatever your program is, whatever your program. All you need to do is run it, right? And if you run it, it just shows which file you're running, but then it just printed hello, and then it also said that hey, the exit code is 0, which is by default the exit code is 0. So that's how you print output data, right? And we will be using print here. Okay, so with that out of the way, now let me say that I need a random number, and I need to generate a random number. So I'm generating a random number. I'm just going to say random dot, and I'm generating a random integer. If you see this, the PyCharm, when I press the dot, it auto fills with a lot of choices you have there, right? And that's why I said that this is that random program in Python is a very sophisticated one. But for now, we just want to generate one random integer, okay? And the function for that is randint, randint. So I go there, and I can give a range, right? So for example, I want a random number between 1 and 10. Okay, I want to generate a random number between 1 and 10. So a lot of things have happened here, and I will go one by one on what I did. This is a variable in Python. I called it as random number. I'm one of those guys who like to really describe what that variable is, right? So I called it as random number. Okay. Now variables, how do you name a variable? As a lot of rules. We'll go over that later. But to start with, a Python variable have to start with the alphabet, and it can have numbers, and alphabets in it. Now there are some more sophisticated things that you can do um, in a Python variable, but that's later we'll cover that, right? For now, you start with some alphanumeric variable name and start with an alphabet. Okay, just keep that in mind. And the other thing that you will notice is in Python is a dynamically typed language in the sense that I don't need to specify the type in the beginning. Okay, I just say, hey, here's a variable, and Python figures out what sort of variable it is. Okay, so I printed the random number, and now I'm just going to change my print statement a little bit differently. I'm just going to say the random number is, give a space, right? And then I just want to print the random number. And in Python, all you can do is you just put a comma, right? And just I put random number. Okay, and that's it. So now I'm going to give you a shortcut on how to run a program. If you see this run command, it says to run a program, you can use like run the sort example. You just use sort, control R, right? So use the control R in your Mac system, or in Windows you have control R, right? So to run a program, I just press control R. And it says, as you see, the random number is 5, right? Now, the one thing you need to see here is, if you notice, it actually printed 2 spaces. You see that? Because I just left a space there. So, which means that if I put a comma, right, it will automatically space your next variable. Okay, let's try that. I just remove the space there, and now you see it only prints 1 space. Okay, so we printed a random number. Okay, so now this is good, but I want to print 10 random numbers. Okay, not just one random number, but 10 such random numbers. Right now, I could always, in other words, I need to put these 2 statements inside a loop, right? Okay, and so I'm going to start with, how do I create a loop in Python, right? How do I create a loop? So there are different ways in which you can do loops in Python. Okay, I'll start with that. But this is a simple way to do it. And initially, I think you can learn this, and then as we go on, I will show you other sophisticated different ways to do loops. Right? Loops means repeating the same thing again and again. Right? So I'm just going to do a loop, and for that you use the for statement. And many languages, including C and Java and JavaScript, you use for. Okay, and then you can give a variable like a counter, right? So I'm just going to say for count, and in our case, I want to print 10 numbers. Okay, so I can put in range. Okay, and then I can put what's the starting point of my loop, 0. Okay, and the ending point of my loop, in this case I will say 9. Okay, so from 0 to 9 I want to print random numbers. Okay, so watch this. I'm just going to give a colon. And then in Python, if you want to do the same thing again and again, now, in C and every place, you just put braces, right? In Python, what you do is, all you do is add a tab, okay? Just indent it, then it becomes part of the loop. Now, all the statements, and this is very important, all the statements that you want to run under the loop has to be indented at the same spot, okay? Otherwise, if you do that, it's just going to print the random number only once in the end. Okay, so it means that, hey, you generate random number for 0 to 9 in range, but you're printing it only the last generated random number. So you got to put that in the loop. Okay, and now let's see if it prints 10 random numbers. Okay, and I'll talk about why did I put 0 and 9. I'll talk about that. Okay, I'll talk about that later. So but now I'm going to run the program. So as you see, it ran so many times. Let's count. So that's 5 times. So how many times did it run? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 times, right? Because you said, hey, you got to run from 0 till 9, correct? So what you need to understand is that the initial value, right, is excluded, right? And it printed until 9. So what I need to do is that I will have to say 0 to 10. Okay. Now it will print 10 times. Let me go and run it again, and you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it printed 10 times, right? So but I don't want to print this random number is 1 random number, because we're going to deal with a lot of numbers, right? So let's say that I don't put this print, the little text statement there, just print the random number, right? Again, run it. Okay, it ran reasonably well. Okay, it ran that. The next thing for me is that, well, you know what, I don't want to, I want to, so if I'm sorting, if I'm learning how to sort numbers, I don't want to just generate 10 numbers. I want to generate something which is little large, but it's not too large, right? So what I thought is, why don't we generate like 100 random numbers, okay? So I'm just going to say, hey, I want 100 random numbers, and the random number range can be 0 till 100, okay? Okay, so can I print it? Again, I run it. Yeah, of course you can print it, but you know, it's a lot of numbers, right? And it randomly generated these numbers. That's the point, right? So it's randomly generated, it's not sorted, okay? Okay, so I generated these numbers. There are now 100 numbers. The next thing it sounds to me is that, well, you know, I can't view these numbers like this. I need to scroll in my console, right? The console is nice. I mean, in PyCharm, it's really nice. But I do need to scroll. But is there a way to maybe avoid the scrolling, right? The one thing I can think about is, well, you know what? When I do the print statement, it just actually adds a new line. So is there a way to remove new lines when I use the print statement in Python? Yeah, you can do that. Very simple. How do you do it? Put a comma and then say end equals nothing. Okay. So what you've done is you said that, hey, print this number. By the way, in the end, just don't print new line. Just leave it empty. Right. That's what this means. Now, if I do that and let me run it, ooh, so now what happened is it's just generating all the numbers without any spaces, right, in the same line. Well, you know what? I don't want to. I mean, I need to format this this random number in a different way, right? I want to give some spaces. Okay. So let's say that I want to give some spaces, and of course you can always give some spaces with with the empty space and put a comma. Okay, you can do that because when you use the print statement, you can just print unlimited of things in commas. Okay, so when I do that and I run it, there you go. Now the numbers are generated and then there is a space between, right? But if you see the spaces, look at that. There are two spaces in between. Because the moment you put a comma and something else here, what it does is, oh, you're printing two elements, so I'll just add a space anyway. Remember the last time we did that? So to avoid that, I can just make that string also empty. Now when I run it, okay, so now it only prints one space. Okay, so it's all formatting. How do you format, right? Now, the next thing I feel here is that, well, so it's generating 100 numbers, but I don't like this format. I want to print only 10 numbers in a line. Okay, and then after 10 numbers I want to go to another line, right, and then another line like that. How do I do it? So what we could do is that, so this is something which prints always doesn't put an end of line, right? But if I want to put one end of line after every 10 numbers, here is something I can do. What I can do is I can say that every time the count is divisible by 10, okay, every time the count is divisible by 10, then I want to make sure that I print a new line. Okay, but the one problem I have, so because if I need to check divisibility, let me put it. So I have a if statement. Okay, I say if the count, and to check divisibility, I can use this reminder operator. Okay, so if I say count reminder of 10, so that means that what this means is it always divides that count variable with the number 10, and whatever is the reminder, it takes that. That's what that reminder function, that reminder symbol is, right? It's an operator. It's an arithmetic operator, and it's almost there in all the languages. So if the reminder is equal to 0, and by the way, to check equality, you use equals equals, okay, to check if the remainder is equal to 0. So what you're doing is you're dividing the count by 10 and then checking if it is equal to 0. Okay, and if you do so, again, all the time when you have a loop statement or a if statement, you put a colon there. Okay, and then see PyCharm automatically added a tab there. Okay, and in here what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say, okay, just print nothing. And I know that when I call print nothing, it will at least print the end of line. Okay, without the end equals empty, it is going to print a end of line. Now if I do this, and now let me run, there's a problem here, but let me run the program and I'll show you what the problem is. So yeah, I ran it, but and then I do see that there's a 49 in the very beginning. There's one number in the beginning. Then after that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I did print 10 numbers in one line. But as I go down, I do see that the last line had only 9 numbers because this first line printed 49. What happened? What happened is that because my count range started from 0, when it's 0, that is the very first count, what it did is, well, the very first count is, if it is divisible by 10, it is, yes, it is, right? So if it is divisible by 10, then it prints it. Okay, So there are various things I can do here to say that, well, so that's why that first number had a new line, right? The one way to do avoid this is that, and I'm going to give you the simplest way, is just change that to 1 and change this to 101, right? It will still count for 100 times. And now when I print it, okay, so now if you see from the first line till the last line, you have 10 numbers, okay? Right? And interestingly, you have a 0, and you also have a 100, and there are some zeros everywhere, right? It's random numbers. So this looks good, right? But still there are some problems because my numbers are not aligned properly. Sometimes I have a number which is 3 digits because it can be 100, right? Sometimes I have 1-digit number and still I have only one space between. And that makes this printout not very good, right? So is there a way to format? Remember, if you are familiar with the C language, there's a function called printf, and you can nicely format the numbers using various format specifiers. They used to call that as. Can we do that with in Python? Sure, you can, right? And the format specifier, the way you specify the format in Python is, first of all, the format specifiers are strings. And in Python, you can use a double quote or a single quote for string. Okay, so because we are already using double quote everywhere, I'm just going to use double quote. Okay, so double quote. And then what I can do is that I can specify the format. And the format here is that, so whenever you want to specify a format, you put it under curly braces and you put a colon. And I want to format a decimal number, so I put a D. And what I thought is that it will be nice if I can print my numbers adjusted with 4 spaces, okay? Because if it is 100, so that occupies 3 space, and then I want one more space. But if it is a 9, I want 3 spaces and a 9, okay? So that's what, so in order to do that, all I need to do is the number I need to put. So I'm saying that, A, put 4 spaces for this decimal number. And that's my format specifier, and then I put a dot, I say format, and so that is actually a string, got it? And format is a function of string. And once you put a string and you say format and you give anything, a number to it, then it will format that, okay? Little bit sophisticated, but that's how you do it, okay? So now let's see how my program runs. There you go, very, very nicely printed, okay? 10 numbers, and if it is a 2-digit number, there are 2 other spaces in there, right? And that one additional space is coming from here, okay, because we added that. But if it is a 3-digit number, I don't see any 3-digit number. In this case, there was no 100 here, okay. We can run another time and see. But because I'm formatting it very nicely already, I don't have to add this additional blank line, right? Confuses everybody. Okay, and now if I run it, okay, so now again, here we go. We have a 3-digit number, right? Still properly aligned, and there's a space in between. And we have generated 100 numbers that are really random in value, okay? So far, let's summarize. We have learned a lot of stuff here, okay? I'm just going to summarize everything here, and in our next class, we are just going to take advantage of these 100 numbers we generated, and I will show you how to take those 100 numbers, sort them, and print them in the sorted order, okay? So you'll gain some experience on how to program on your own, right? But the one thing I'll tell you is that try this. Try download PyCharm, write this program, try it out, and play with it, right? Play with different formats and stuff like that. Put like 5D, what happens, change your loop ranges and things like that, and just play with it. Then you gain some experience on how to program in Python, okay? But I'm just going to summarize all the things that we learned. First of all, if you want to import any program, and it could be a program that you write, you just use an import statement and you specify the program that you want to import, right? Basically, there should be a program called random.py for Python in this Python standard library, okay? And that when you say import, when you say random, then it knows it has to import that. Then we learned about how to create a loop. And as I repeat it, there are many ways to create a loop in Python. This is one way, okay? You say for a variable in the range, what is the starting point of that variable's range and what is the ending point of that variable's range, okay? Do something, and then you got to put a colon, and anything you want to do under that loop should have an indent. That's it, okay? Like in C, you have braces and stuff. You don't have that in Python. You don't have to do that. And that's why, some of my kids learn Python very fast because they don't have to know how to type a brace. If their typing skill is not that up to speed, then it's very easy to code in Python, right? And the other thing, I usually for kids, what I do is I make sure that the variables are really smaller. Instead of count, I'll just put a C in there. But since I'm assuming that I'm teaching to adults, I just want to put some really meaningful variable names, okay? And then what I did is that I used this random function random.randint. And if you see that, this is kind of the dot notation says that random is kind of an object, right? In Python, everything is an object in the sense of what Python thinks as an object-oriented language, okay? Python's object-oriented orientation is a little bit not pure, but still it is an object. That random is an object according to Python, okay? Then you call the function of the object called randint, and you specify the range. Hey, I want a random number between 0 and 100, okay? So that's what this statement does. And I talked about Python variables. They are dynamically typed. So once I have a random number, I just assign it to a number. It automatically figures out, oh, okay, this is a number type, okay? This is an integer type. So Python variables are all dynamically typed, so you don't have to specify the type. The next thing we learned about, how do I print? We spent a lot of time on printing stuff. The first thing is I can print anything with a comma in there and it will add spaces. This peculiar kind of thing that end equals blank, we provided to just kind of guide the print statement, saying that, hey, don't print end of line character when you print this statement. Then we print the random number, but we want to have some formatting. We said that I use this format, and this is the format specifier format in Python. You just put curly braces, colon, and for decimal you put a D. For a string you will put a S, and for floating point numbers you will put a F. And you say how many spaces it kind of need to adjust with for the number, right? So that's what you specified, and you call the format function. Now what we said is we want to print our number with 10 numbers in one line, and for that we kind of used a clever trick. We just said that if that count variable that is in the loop, if its remainder is 0, that means it's divisible by 10. And whenever that happens, just print a blank print statement which will print a new line, okay? and it did that. And then to make sure that this trick will work, we just changed the range. Instead of from 0 to 100, we just changed to 1 to 101. Now, one thing you got to remember is this range has nothing to do with our random integer. I could have said that I generate random integers, which is 0 to 1000, right? It would have generated it. One other thing I want to specify before we close this class is that, so I'll give a, I will just take this out of the way, right? And then let's say that I take the same random number and assign it to a string. Okay, I want to show you something here. I run it. See, that's kind of what has happened, right? So my random number originally was assigned to an integer, right? Now suddenly I reassigned it to a string, and Python did not comply because it's dynamically typed. And that is an advantage and a disadvantage. Okay, sometimes you can use the same variable for to treat it as a string or a number, right? And that's a great way to do it. But I would not recommend that, because if you do it that way, then you are confusing your program, the other programs who read your program. Okay, but you do have this facility where you can change the type of same variable in the program. Okay, so initially it was a number, now you changed it to a string. I just want to show you that, and that's one of the features of a dynamically typed language. Let me go back to our original program. Okay. Okay, and run it one last time, and here it is. Okay, so this is, I know that I try to, so usually people teach you like a hello world program and they finish it off there, but I just want to give you a little bit an idea of what Python language is, and that's why I gave you a little bit more sophisticated program, but it's not something very complicated. If you're already a programmer, and if you're done programming in other languages, you already know what is going on here, right? So obviously you can put additional comments and questions under this video, and let me know what you think, and based on your feedback I will improve the classes in future. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for taking the time to learn Python. Thank you.